Howdy, howdy, lads, MBs, and lasses. If you live in the Harris Branch neighborhood in Austin, Texas, my name's Anthony, and I'm your neighbor. This is another monthly recap of our residential HOA board meeting. These happen on the third Thursday of every month. You will receive a notification from Town Square. The link to sign up for that is in the description below, letting you know the Zoom link and the time that you can attend. I highly recommend it. Or if you just want to keep up to date with the information that happens at these, simply hit that subscribe button, that little bell notification button, and each month you'll be notified when a video comes out from this channel covering those meetings. Per usual, the meeting was called to order. There was a quorum. Vanessa was not there. However, Mike, Jorge, and David were able to carry the quorum. They voted number 3 to approve the prior meeting minutes. Those were voted and approved. For the treasurer's report, Jorge covered this. There is only 2 items on there. The main thing to take away there is the budget for capital improvements was out of whack because of the fence committee that Martin and Gary spearheaded and Mike rubber stamped. This ended up costing, for this first phase and second phase, a total of $49,826. And then there's third and fourth phases, I believe, coming up in the next year. There was a lot of talk about the coding. The issue with the budget was there is a thing called a reserve fund that we have. You can always see this if you go to Town Square. You can always look at the budget. It'll give you line item breakdowns of how the budget's allocated and for what it is used. So if you ever have questions about where money's going, you can always go to Town Square and look at it there and see where our bigger expenses are. The reserve fund is money that is put aside every year into a fund that essentially is determined by a reserve audit. The HOA hires a third party to come out and take analysis and survey all of the assets that the residential HOA board has. So they do this audit where they go and check everything, and they come up with the cost it would be to completely replace it if it had a catastrophic failure. So that way you have enough money in your reserve fund to cover everything that you currently have as an asset if it were to fall apart. Point of the matter is the reserve fund is there for replacing things that are already deteriorating and that we have set money aside to do. Be it, say, we need to redo the plaster on the pool or the monuments, the reserve fund is where that money should come from. And if you don't code it correctly, it can kind of throw off the balance sheet when it comes in as an expense when it is not part of the usual yearly costs. Long story short, there's a lot of talk about that, and that hopefully will help you understand what the reserve fund is and what its purpose is and why it sits there and is not being used necessarily to do anything that isn't already approved within that audit. That doesn't mean we can't. That's just how the board has been doing it for the past couple decades. 2, the homeowner forum, nothing there to discuss. We move down to number 5, the president's report. Mike pretty much laid out most of the updates within the old business and new business below, so we're going to go ahead and cover those down there and those items. 6, the community manager report. Raquel had a few things. There was a dog park gate that was installed. This is in the large dog park. There's a lot of issue going on out there because there's not a sufficient amount of flora out there. The only things out there are the few trees that I was able to plant out there. There's still a few going strong. That biggest issue, again, with that area is there's no water run to it. I discussed this in the previous video. Feel free to always go back and to watch that to catch up on this. There are fitness repairs still pending in the fitness facility. Those are, again, still waiting for parts to come in. Nothing new there. She mentioned that Samsung had finished the Monarch Butterfly kiosk. This was completed and installed at the Amenity Center. I haven't had a chance to go check it out. If you have, leave a comment below and let me know what it's like, if there's anything of value there. The final item that was a big concern for the neighborhood was there had been cable spools from, it turns out to be AT&T running cable or fiber in the area. They had left a lot of the materials after they completed their pools, and at this point, all of that has been picked up and has been cleared out. So that's a good win for the neighborhood. 7, committee reports. A, neighborhood representative Gary Belcher. He had mentioned the desire to have speed devices installed. Gary had mentioned that there were speed readers on Bellingham Drive, and he had also mentioned that the HOA had installed it. This must have occurred long before I was on the board. I had never heard of this. I would be surprised if the city would even let an HOA install traffic signage. I remember even down south off of Altorf, the neighborhood where they have all that high-speed traffic that goes through their neighborhood, they had put out big signs that said slow down, and the city came and picked them all up and took them away. So a little bit more to dig in there. there to see if that's actually a legit thing or if it was the city that put it in at the behest of homeowners calling in via 311 and getting it to trend, thus having the city install it. These signs I'm talking about are the ones that show the LED readouts of your speed, and they'll tell you your speed, and they'll blink at you if you're going over a certain amount. You see them all the time throughout the city. B, the fence committee. Martin got the bag, Gary got the fences. So at this point, no update. C, architectural change. We had 8 projects in review. They were mainly for solar panels. One thing I will say as a bit of knowledge I have, if you get solar panels and there is an outage, your solar panels will not power the home. The power is turned off from them, mainly because they don't want energy going back into the line when their linemen are working on it. However, if you do purchase panels with batteries, then those solar panels will continue to run and circuit through to your batteries, keeping your house online during a power outage. Just something to consider if you're going to get solar, look into batteries. So that way you can still use that solar if there is an outage. D, the amenity center expansion. As mentioned in all the other previous videos, that is still ongoing. Something I had talked about but wasn't too familiar with was there was a concrete lien, and that lien was by a company called Alamo Concrete. It turns out they were a subcontractor from Cooper, who was the contractor that the board hired to build the building. Turns out that Cooper not only kind of dicked us, he turned around and dicked a lot of his subcontractors and hasn't paid them. So in this situation, what's happening is those subcontractors are now coming after the HOA to get the payout. That's something that the board is trying to work with Alamo on to see if they'll take a settlement at a lower cost. Mike is still waiting on the VP from Goodwin to provide next steps on how they want to proceed for the punch list items that were not completed, despite the Cooper contractor telling us they were. The board had gone, Mike, Gary, and David had all gone and checked. Those were not completed, and so that's why we never signed off on the final payment to them, as we wanted what we agreed in contract. So that's been terminated, and now we're trying to find what the next steps are. This is the main source now that is holding up our certification of occupancy. E, communications. Raquel mentioned that most to, if not all, of the modifications they wanted to do to the Town Square website that would be internal, external for people looking to move to the neighborhood, as well as for neighbors to use, are done. And after review from the board, I believe they will be publishing that site. Once that's up, I'll go ahead and put that in the description below, along with all the other valuable links for community engagement and HOA information. F, the arts and crafts with Sharon Campbell. That occurred on the 29th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There was about 10 vendors out there, as I understand it. Was a good turnout, more than last year. It's one of those things, as we consistently keep doing these, I suspect we'll get more and more traction. I'm a big proponent of supporting your neighbors and your local businesses and being able to lean on that mutual aid and sense of community. At this event, they had baby goats, so the kids had a lot of fun. I'm sure some adults did too. There was a canned food drive and a raffle. The VP from Goodwin provided 6 gift cards of $25 each and one for $150. However, because the turnout was low, still higher than last year, but low enough that they didn't even have to do the raffle, and everybody walked away with a gift card. The vendors and homeowners who had participated in this event wanted to do it more frequently, so look for notifications and updates via email from Town Square, or look for updates on the news and events section on Town Square. 8, old business. A, the tennis court locks. I talked about this extensively in a previous video. I still think it is ludicrous to be spending $6,500 on locks that are going to be broken again, and we have had this ongoing arms race instead of just making it more easily accessible. Again, how many tennis nets can we replace for $6,500? I can imagine that's probably quite a bit compared to how much expensive it's going to be once these locks are broken or fail or require replacement in 4 years. B, property manager welcoming program and orientation process, waiting on revision from Raquel and Gary Belcher. That's completed pretty much at this point. I'm just going to skip that. C, amenity center rentals. Now, this is something I brought up on the last one. I think it's bananas that they're going to charge homeowners a fee to rent out these spaces. Now, it got a little buck wild because Raquel and Vanessa were thinking, mainly these were Vanessa's recommendations of homeowners being able to rent the pool and the gym, so like a very large section of it, whereas initially my understanding at least was it's just going to be the new office building with the event space in it. So with that being said, I'm going to pop up here the fees and deposits that they came up with. Quite eye-opening to think that you're going to charge homeowners who paid for the building through their fees and then pay for the lights to stay on through their fees to then charge them to rent out the space. Now, all these things that were kind of mentioned as like, well, we want to, have buy-in, most of those countered with simple measures. For example, there was worry that someone might just book the whole week. Well, set a parameter that only lets person book one block a day or whatever parameter you want. You don't need to charge people to use something that they've already paid for. It's wild to me that the board grasps this concept when it comes to the pool, where you don't pay a fee to use the pool because your dues every year are paying that. So in my mind, this is really gross, a double dip. Sadly, it looks like the board are going to push that thing through before myself or Valerie on the board, but that's where it's at, just so you know, for next year when those positions are open, because I think we should be reducing costs to homeowners, not increasing costs to homeowners. D, the Samsung project. This is after they've killed all aquatic life in our creeks. I believe this has happened multiple times. You can go back to a previous video. There's plenty of news articles. This is a PR stunt. The board kind of is going to take this at the little bow and their cute little kiosks. Gary had said that they had cleared out all the poison ivy, they dredged the stream, they picked out the trash out of it, and then they planted native species. They are going to be filing for it to be a certified monarch habitat, which all I'm on board for. But when you look at the actual size of the slice of the pie you got, when you see the size of the pie, you realize, yeah, you got. That being said, there was no mention of who's going to maintain those spaces, because as somebody who does a lot of work of trying to keep them vibrant and thriving, that's not a one and done. You're going to have to constantly go out there and monitor and remove non-native invasives and all sorts of things that have to be addressed on a yearly, if not bi-yearly basis, which is great. But once it comes down to who's going to keep up with that and maintain that, I'm interested to see that. I haven't heard anything about that. Now maybe Samsung will come around. Maybe the board will get a spine and demand it. Hopefully. I know when I was on the board and this came out, I didn't have much backing when I was pushing back on Samsung. But we'll see. E, pool hours extension. Now, this is an interesting thing. We finally got an update on it. On the previous videos, there has been a lot of talk about the classification of the pool. Now, Raquel mentioned at this meeting that the pool was classified in a way that it could be swim at your own risk. Here's the kicker. We are going to keep searching for bids for lifeguards because we've always had lifeguards. This is that sort of outdated view I've been talking about that I've experienced on the board. They're not very amenable to moving things in a way that is different than how we've done it without even really paying attention to the benefits of it. I believe we pay something like $76,000, circa $76,000 a year for lifeguards. That's a lot of money we could be putting back into other things. That's a lot of money we could be putting back into cutting dues. A lot of stuff we can do with $76,000 a year. You can also allow for the pool to have extended hours because you won't have to have a lifeguard on duty. Now, of course, there is potential for vandalism. But there's potential for vandalism when we had the lifeguards anyways. The lifeguards aren't there 24/7. You can easily hop that fence and break stuff. Now, when stuff gets broken, which it has, right? This has happened while we've had lifeguards. Now we're spending $76,000 for lifeguards with the false sense of security. Don't get me wrong. The false sense of security in the sense that they're preventing vandalism. But then you're also paying for the vandalism to replace and repair it. So if you took the $76,000 and just put it aside, you would come out way cheaper because it doesn't cost that much to fix the fence. It doesn't cost that much to fix the lawn chairs and tables. So you would be getting a net gain if you got rid of that. Plus, you would increase user experience because all of us would be able to use it at hours that are more suitable to us. And I'm not even saying you have to do it permanently. We could do a trial run. We don't have to commit to anything. We can give it a shot and see how it goes. Maybe in the past, it was a bigger problem. Maybe now it won't be. Who knows? We won't even give it an opportunity, and that's because of the leadership of the board that's currently on there under Mike. F, seeking additional estimates for pump, room, and pool repairs. The current vendor has provided a scope of work and options. Due date for estimates will be November 11th. Board recommended considering an actual pool company. This has been discussed in the previous meeting. As far as it goes, the pump room repairs are still pending. They're waiting for quotes. No update there. G, seeking estimates for 2023 lifeguards. I've already covered this previously on E with the pool hours extension. H, the request for quote on irrigation to be installed at the dog park due to cracks in ground. Landscapes proposed adding a truck of dirt. To fill cracks, expect continued cracking due to clay in area, lack of substantial trees to provide soil stabilization, and shade adds to the impact of summer heat. Community manager will also seek estimates from landscape to add trees like the size type used along Harris Branch Parkway. Now, the quote for that irrigation system came in at $22K. And that, unfortunately, I'm going to show you what the legend looks like that they wanted to show for the coverage of that water. This quote is for turf grass. This is to cover all of that space with sprinklers in the sense of coverage of water. If you pinpoint and focus on the trees, which is what I had been advocating for since day one of being on the board, went out and planted the trees multiple times, and despite Gary snide comments about them being piddly little sticks, the point of that was because we didn't want to spend all this money on irrigation to go out there. But I still felt it prudent for us to start a process to get shade that was cheap, free, and didn't require all this water to be run. Now, it seems as if the board is shifting in the sense that they are more inclined to spend the money on it. I suspect a lot of it has to do with the increase of homeowners that are using the park. We've got a lot more people here than when I first went out and put those trees in, and I'm all on board for it. It's just something that could have been addressed long ago, but at that time, there was cold feet. Maybe I didn't have a YouTube channel to talk to the population about what they were doing. So things could have changed in that sense. But ultimately, I think putting more tree cover in there is going to be the best option, and only focusing on running water to those trees in the form of bubblers. If you're going to run it, we can always do gator bags, which you just fill and they sit on the trees. One of the big things about putting large trees in is they require a lot of water to stabilize. Why it's always better to start with smaller trees. 1, they're cheaper. 2, they acclimate to the soil better. And 3, they don't require as much water. I think they should mold that into $22,000 in landscaping of trees all along the median. I think they should run that into the park. I think we should stop mowing those so much. I think we should have robust shade cover all along those sidewalks, so when people are walking up and down between the neighborhoods or even to the dog park, they aren't melting in the summer Texas heat. Just ideas that we could do that plenty of other places have done and worked. I requested quotes for repair replaces of second gate to large dog park by Unruh and Black Belt Construction. This was completed, mentioned earlier. J, the Thistle Hill Monument repair. I've talked about this in the previous meeting. K, Alamo Concrete 2K settlement offer for the lien. I talked about that earlier. L, the 2023 budget. They are working on that. 9, the insurance coverage regarding pool liability. I discussed that earlier. They're still looking into the actual cost of moving over to that. However, we were able to clear up, at least according to Raquel at this point, that we can that the pool is in a classification where we can do swim at your own risk. 10, the executive session. That is where the board discusses items that are privy to the board due to the private information of property owners involved in any issues that they are talking about. 11, adjourn the meeting. And that wraps up the November meeting recap for the residential Harris Branch HOA meeting. If you have anything that you would like to get covered, or any questions or concerns, any critiques that you'd like to see, maybe the audio, lighting, anything like that, always feel free to put a comment below. I'll do my best to try and address it, and make sure to hit subscribe and the little bell for notifications so that way you can stay up to date every time these come out. Always check out the description. There are all the links to the HOA community resources as well as the HOA information. And with all that being said, y'all stay safe out there. Take care. Bye.